Get ready to stir it up.
With real conversations, let's have real conversations.
Get ready to stir it up.
Life events and everything in between, let's go.
Get ready to stir it up.
No capping, it just got you covered right up.
Get ready to stir it up. Stir it up.
Come on.
Get ready to stir it up.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Stir It Up. Today I have a guest. He is Seth Asafo. Seth is a psychologist, and we're going to be talking today about thriving relationships and what is needed for a relationship to thrive. And we're clear it's not a one-size-fits-all, but we're going to attempt to kind of have the conversation. It's really good to have you here.
It's nice to be here.
Thank you. I do this thing with some of my guests where I measure how much kicking and screaming they did to arrive here, and how much coaxing did I have to do?
Oh, my case was 0.
No,
because I wanted to be here.
Thank you for coming, Seth.
Thank you for having me.
So I will start off by just setting a bit of context. You know, we see couples, and by all standards, they should be happy because they are socially fit. They have a lot of things going for them, just from an economic standpoint, from a social standpoint, and just even like religious alignment, and most things seem to be going well. But when you begin to scratch the surface, you don't really need to scratch too deep, and you will discover that right?
Yeah.
If you were to, just based on your experience, what are some of the things that would support a thriving relationship, or what are some of the things that are absent, hence the enkoye that is happening as you scratch the surface?
I mean, I want to appreciate you for doing this. I think it's very important. There are lots of people who want to hear things like this, and I don't profess to know it all, and everything I say is based on my clinical experience in all that I do. I hope that it will be beneficial to some other people.
I think it will be.
I mean, when we talk about thriving, we are looking for growth, or we are looking for movement. I normally take it from the point of movement, because basically once you move, you'll find something that allows you to thrive. But in my experience, the biggest challenges for many relationships, why they suffer a lot, is poor communication or a lack of communication. That raises the tendency for people to have many assumptions as well as expectations. But these are very subjective to them. And so usually when you have an assumption or you have an expectation and it's not met, you start to experience frustration. Now, when you have people communicating and there is no understanding, there's a problem.
Absolutely.
Because you might mean well. Unfortunately, your partner might receive it in another way, just because the communication is not the best. Sometimes I want to take the pressure off the person doing the communication to the person listening to the communication. In many instances, I have seen how in a lot of relationships, people communicate and listen during communication just to respond and not to understand. So it makes it difficult. It's like I'm listening to one aspect of, I'm just looking for something I can hold on to. So it makes it difficult to hear everything or to look at the bigger picture. So poor communication is one thing. We have an interesting phenomenon in our part of the world where many relationships fail to thrive because of external interferences, especially from family and friends. And I want to zone in a lot on family because it's something that I experience in my practice. I hear like a partner male say, she's always calling her sister, or a partner female say, he's always calling the mother. So essentially, these are points of frustration. Now, the tricky part is to ask your partner not to engage
with their family.
It's equally like, what are you trying to say? So many people just say, well, I'm not going to talk about it. But the pain is there. The frustration is there. And so then all these things are happening subliminally, and little triggers just bring it up. Then I also noticed that the lack of appreciation is also a huge thing for many people. And these can be in very like simple terms of just saying thank you, or just showing that you appreciate the effort that your partner puts in, which is a complaint that I get a lot from my clients. Like, he doesn't even see it. She doesn't even see it. All the things I do, I'm bending over backwards. And sometimes it's even trivialized where the person says, oh, just because of this, and you are saying this, or someone does it better. So I would put it on poor communication, the lack of appreciation, and then the external interferences. Now, the more classic reasons of finances, ill health, issues that surround use of alcohol and drugs are also part. And those we normally see as, okay, yeah, we've always known them. But they're the ones that are there, but they are not spoken about a lot, are the ones that I normally like to discuss.
Got it. It would be good for us to kind of talk a bit more on the assumptions that you talk about and the expectations, right? Yeah. And I say assumptions because I feel like assumptions are born out of pure communication. Because you assume things when you don't know for a fact, or if you can't ask questions, or if it's unclear to you. And I'm assuming here
of course.
as well, right? How do you begin to remove the element of assumptions, bearing in mind that that person is who they are and they've come into a relationship, right? So how do you begin to teach someone to unlearn the art of, constantly making assumptions?
Good question. And I say this from all my mentors who've always said, when you're unsure about something, just ask. That's the simplest, and I guess it's the golden rule to take assumptions away. Now, you see, there are a number of things that happen on the psychological level, which has to do with our thinking patterns that we're unaware of. And the first part is, when you make assumptions, they're real.
To you.
To you.
Yes.
Perfectly. Yeah. So because they become real, you react as if it were factual, but still just an assumption. So assuming that, and we all pass these statements every now and then, but he should know, she should know. They're still assumptions. Now, your frustration is born out of the fact that you're treating that assumption as a fact. And that's why you are reacting. If you come to realize that I am probably assuming by asking the questions, can I say 100% that they know, is what will make you not react. Yeah. But the moment you believe that they should know, you're in for trouble. Comes back to expectations, which are also very related to assumptions. I expect this of my wife, I expect this of my husband, I expect this of my in-laws, are all assumptions that you are still making in the background, but they become so real. See, the thing about the human mind is when you think something,
for you it becomes almost palpable.
It is real.
Yeah.
It is real. And I always give these examples of telling people, think about something that you admire, you cherish, you adore. And as you put something in your mind, think about losing it. And the moment you say that, I get people who cringe, like, because they were thinking about like their mother, their son, their daughter. And I say, you see, that is even you imagining it.
Yeah.
Just the thought can bring the emotion so real. In the same way, in making that assumption, it's a thought, but it becomes so real because you believe it to be so. And once you assume it and you are not getting it the way you want, with humans, anything that blocks our goal to achieve something causes a frustration. And frustrations are normally things that we act out in aggressive manners towards.
As you were talking, I can see it completely. It's almost when you think that your partner is doing something and you just need 1 or 2 points of confirmation or imaginary confirmation. and it's almost like real to you, right? You say that like you can identify.
So many. I mean, it's classic. I mean, I work with many couples, those who are trying to get into marriage, those who are out of marriage, those who are even in romantic relationships, and you find these things happen consistently. Recently, I was talking with one of my clients who are a couple, and I had a story from the woman who had said she's been cheated on so consistently, you know, and I believed it until I spoke to the man. And the man said, well, it was one instance where my phone was with my wife and somebody had sent a message, and the message was, I miss you. Based on that, he's become a cheat, even though he's done nothing. And it's so real that her reactions towards him are that of disgust, like somebody who's actually cheated. And the pain is still there. It's been about a couple of years, but it's still there. And it's based on a certain assumption.
Internal and external influences. You know, growing up, we were we had extended families. And, you know, in a household, you'd have cousins and, you know, uncles and aunties. But we've transitioned to a more nuclear-focused family system. So you would think that the external influence would be reduced. But interestingly, the external influence has been replaced with other external influences. Yes, so there's still a bit of the family influence, but there's the social influences, there's the social media, there's still the work influences and so on. If you were to weigh the internal influences, which is the things that you've talked about, communication, the assumptions, the expectations and all of that, and you were to weigh it against the external influences that affect how a relationship thrives, where do you think the biggest pull comes from? And I know it's not a one-size-fits-all, but for most people, where is the pull?
Well, you see, the reality is, for many external influences, we are aware of them because we can see them to some degree. And I even want to move away from just influences of the family to issues such as external influences like gaining weight,
Got it.
Finances,
Yes.
Children. You know, when children come into a relationship, suddenly
It changes the dynamics.
change.
Yeah.
Good. Now, for many people, the internal influences are things they are unaware of.
Got it.
And it's the basis for the onset of many challenges, which are further exacerbated by the external. I'll give you some examples. You have people who have had, say, very bad relationships in the past. Now, they've come to a place where, as their way of protecting themselves, they look out for the worst. So they say, every man cheats.
So that's their coping mechanism of
Good.
sorts.
Every woman will cheat is the mindset they have.
Or every woman is there for your money.
Perfectly, which is even a much better example. Now, you see, this is very internal to the person, and it's difficult for the other person to identify. And so these become like ghosts that are causing chaos within the relationship.
Yeah. So you can't even see it or recognize it.
That's why I like the internal, because then people like us psychologists can help you identify that you have these challenges in the background. You have people whose parents had very bad and terrible relationships. Now, to conform to society, they have gotten in a relationship. They don't believe the relationship to be anything that would give them anything positive. But, you know, just to get society off their back, they get in. Now, the assumptions they make about the relationship are internal to them. But they'll manifest it so physically that the other person sometimes gets confused. Like, how can you be so negative? I've always, like, I've done this, but you never see it. It's not your fault. It is very internal to the person. And those ones are very challenging. We've had people who've had, like, repressed emotions from things that have happened. And these things seep into consciousness every now and then and causes them to act erratically. I have a client who says, Seth, I just can't understand my wife. She gets upset over everything and anything. And sometimes it's not even a big deal. So those ones for me, now together, when the externals come, or the externals will come and make it even worse.
They exacerbate them.
They exacerbate it for anyone who doesn't understand.
And that could be as a result of her own traumatic experience.
Exactly.
It could be abuse. It could be neglect. It could be whatever experience they have had.
It could even be a personality trait.
It could be a personality trait.
Yes. So in some relationships that I have worked with where one partner has the trait of perfectionism, they believe that everything must be in this order. They equally believe that they never make mistakes. Now, in many instances, the reason why that becomes true is the other partner is choosing their battles. Yes. So when they make mistakes, they
ignore it. Yes.
And they start to believe. Now, so you can imagine that kind of pressure with someone who believes that they make no errors and they're always accusing you, they're always talking you down. Internal factors could be issues around self-worth and self-esteem also. It's just your own evaluation of who you are. Now, if you don't feel attractive, before long, you may actually become unattractive because you'll never do anything to help yourself if perhaps you're gaining weight or you become unkempt, etc. So these are things that occur in the background. And I like those ones more than the external, because in the external, lots of people can see. You can get people who would say, I think it's finances, I think it's... But with the internal ones, it's difficult for the layperson to see, except for people who are very close to you.
Got it. Got it. You know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with someone just last week. We've had a very difficult partner that we work with. And we're talking about the person's personality. And I was like, I wonder how this person's going to change, right? And my work colleague says, oh, even if she has a near-death experience, she won't change. And when she said it, I was like, but even Saul on his way to Damascus changed. And she says, no, this one is not going to change. But I guess what you're saying sheds light on that. It's an internal conflict, it's an internal battle. And until that internal situation is resolved, or you're able to identify what the trigger is, what's going on there, and you begin to kind of take steps to kind of resolve some of that, you're not really going to make any progress.
So the awareness, that's it. You can only solve a problem if you identify that it's a problem. So the self-awareness is what we tend to get people to see, to open perspective and make them see that, well, I'm looking at it this way, but there are like 6, 7 other ways in which I should look at it, or that I can look at it. And as you open the perspective, it brings what you call a consciousness rising. That allows for them to say, okay, then maybe now I have to take certain steps to make things change.
So, hypothetical situation. Couple is struggling. They clearly are a good fit on many levels. But you know our culture. Therapy dear. Me kwe du bwa him pam be mo to se me skinny kintinka ne kwa therapy kwa de me kwa kama sama jawai. How do you begin to navigate some of these things?
So you see, it's not unusual in our line of work to work with one partner to offer therapy to the other.
Please whisper some secrets.
So you see,
that's interesting. I haven't actually. Come on, yes, go on.
So it's working with one person to do therapy unconsciously with the other partner. Now you see, if you look at every relationship is an interaction, and within every interaction are points of tension and then either also points where things are better. Okay. Now, let's say that I have my client who's telling me we're a good fit. I say, oh, but where are your challenges? Then they point out it's related to the kids. Now, what it means is anything we can do to modify that skill for the person we're working with, that is in agreement to their partner's ideologies, is doing therapy. Because half the time, partners become stubborn because they are competing for power. That's all it is.
You know, my friend William always says that relationships are about power.
Yes.
And in a relationship, the one who cares the least is the powerful one.
Exactly. And it's not because they are the powerful one, but it's because the other person tries harder.
Too hard to keep up.
That's all it is.
Yeah. And it's almost this whole push and pull thing where the person who's an avoidance doesn't have to make an effort, and the person who is clingy is doing overtime to overcompensate, and is, you know, so I can be there and, you know, be chilling, and you'll be doing all the work and jumping through
And they get
hoops.
even more attractive by trying harder.
Who gets more attractive by trying
The
harder?
person who's trying harder,
Yeah.
they get less attractive.
Yes.
They get less attractive.
by trying.
And the less attractive they get, the more they try. And the more they try, the more they become repulsive
Yeah.
to the other person.
No, I agree with you 100%.
So it's a power play thing.
yeah.
Now, I tell people that in every relationship, what matters the most is winning the war, not the battle.
Yeah, because the battles are short term.
So if you choose your battles well, you win the war. There's nothing more beautiful than making someone believe that they are in control when you are in control.
Tell me a bit more about that.
It's like saying yes a lot, but to the most important things when you say no, because you say a lot of yeses, there's no competition around that.
Yeah.
But if you
fight over everything.
it takes that power away from you. So we can work with her to work with him, to change the dynamics.
Or work with him to
work with her. Now, the other thing we talk about is vicarious learning, that you learn by observation, okay? So if you want your partner to be doing something and you're doing it, and it might not be to your partner, it might be to your kids, it might be to other people, they're likely to look at it, look at the benefits that it brings, and learn it in do saying, without you having to say, do it like this. I'll give you an example about a parent. So you have two parents. One of them always wants, do it now. And the kid's always rebelling. You have the other parent who is always so soft-spoken but gets the work done. At some point, the other parent's like, why is it that it's always this way? They observe and they realize what it is. And they also start, okay, let me just try. And they do it. So then you would have solved a problem, because if perhaps one parent had gone to the other and said, I don't want you to shout on the child.
It wouldn't be
It becomes, your child, you don't want us to talk about. That's all it is.
Yeah. But how does that not work in relationships? So, because you think that, you know, a lot of the time we treat people a certain way, hoping that they will treat us the same way, right? So I'm kind to you, I'm thoughtful, I'm considerate to you, because my expectation is that in doing that for you, you will do that for me.
Good.
But that doesn't happen.
Yes, because we have different ways of expressing different emotions to people.
Okay.
So if we're in a relationship, you might express kindness in one way. I might express kindness in another way. But I know I'm being kind to you, except that my language, like sometimes people say love language, you can't decode my love language and I can't decode yours. So let me give you this example. I had a couple who, so the wife is always saying, I do this, I cook, He doesn't care about that. And he doesn't do anything. And then the man says, you know what? Every time you cook and you spill oil all around,
I clean it.
do you ever ask how it gets cleaned? But I don't come and make noise about it. Every time I take your car out and have it serviced, I don't come and say, I serviced your car. So there's definitely something. And if you don't look a little deeper, you might use your expectations to judge people's actions. And that's a surefire for chaos.
But so now you've opened up a can of worms. Now let me tell you why you've opened up a can of worms.
Right.
Should we love people in a relationship the way we experience love or the way they experience love?
I always say that don't be artificial. I always say do it the way you know it. If you try to do beyond what you can, in many cases you're not able to sustain it. And that's even more frustrating. It's like, yeah, and then suddenly you can't do it anymore. Guess what? A thriving relationship doesn't mean there are no conflicts.
I agree.
A thriving relationship means conflicts can give us a good opportunity to address our needs. In fact, if you look at the whole concept of conflicts, conflicts are good.
I agree that a thriving relationship does not mean the absence of conflict. But I don't think I agree that you should not make an effort to,
You will make the effort. Don't kill yourself making the effort is what I'm saying.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You know, if you're in a relationship with someone, my assumption is that you care.
Mm-hmm.
And I have these debates all the time. So
That's okay.
so you care about someone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And caring about someone would normally involve, it's like your children, right? If your son spilled a cup of tea on the floor, you would clean it and there would be no angst as you cleaned it, right? But a lot of the time, if your girlfriend, no, let me scratch that. Let me give a better example. I have a friend. A complaint that my friend has made is that their partner leaves a door open, right? And I'm like, so what? Oh, why do they leave the door open? It irritates me. And I'm like, okay. Is it the end of the world? How big is that? It's a small thing, right? So I said, if this was your child who left the door open, how would you respond to it? And the response was, I would ask the child to shut the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. And would you feel anything about it after that? No. And then this friend just burst out laughing. And he says, why do you always have to simplify everything? So my friend then says, why do you always have to simplify everything like that? And it's because when it comes to partners, I think that we overthink a lot of things, right? Expectations, right? So it's the same thing when I feel like when it comes to love, that if my partner does not experience love a certain way, that it would be nice if I could try and show my partner love in the way that they experience love.
Yes.
I might not be able to be at 100% all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but there should be some effort, no?
Perfectly. Question is, as you try to put that effort, are you losing anything? That's where the question is. It's the contention is not in trying.
Okay.
But if you're trying, are you losing whilst you try?
What could you be losing? So let's say you like acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
Hypothetically, what could your partner be losing by acts of service?
Maybe in that instance, nothing.
Okay.
But there are, of course, other instances where what your partner wants are things that are very contradictory to maybe your personal values.
So give me an example.
So in a relationship where one partner drinks and the other doesn't, and says, you know what, I would really love to have a glass of wine with you. That's what I feel will unwind all of us. If you try to do that and you never had it, it is your personal value.
So I see that. So I guess maybe I was looking at it broadly in terms of the general thing of maybe acts of service or quality time, but I wasn't going into the detail of what's happening in that quality time.
Okay.
So I guess that's where you are coming from. Okay.
So then let's not forget that our personality traits in themselves have pluses and minuses across board.
Got it.
Okay. Now, your explanation of quality time
might vary from my explanation of quality time. That's what I'm saying, that maybe I'm not looking at the detail of what that constitutes.
It
Right?
can, I guess we can only look at this in detail. In general, it looks very simplistic on the surface.
Yeah.
But the reality is,
Meko disco. Mimpe disco.
there you go.
So that's where the divergence comes in.
Perfectly.
Got it.
So don't break your back to accommodate that for your partner. You can go once.
Yeah.
That's a sacrifice. So I say that we have to sacrifice in relationships, but you can't sacrifice all the time.
Especially who you are as a person or what your values are.
Perfectly. Because if you sacrifice all the time, at some point you wear out, and it will lose that it should be a natural thing. So if I do things that I enjoy doing and I don't want anything in return, I just do it because I want to do it, that's you. To expect the same thing back, I tell people, is chaos.
Okay. So I read this article from Forbes, and it was an article around the requirements for a healthy relationship, right? And I think that there was the author was a guy called Mark Travers, and it talked about certain values that needed to be present for a relationship to thrive, or a relationship that were really, really important to people. And there were two key sets of values, but top of the list was honesty and humility as a set. What are your thoughts?
Honesty and humility.
And it was within the construct of honesty is that openness, a certain set of loyalty, being truthful, right? And humility was that ability to be, just humble, right? And not being boastful. And I think nobody likes someone who's loud and arrogant and,
Oh, some people do.
Some people do.
Of course.
Oh, tell me about that.
Some people do.
Is it?
Of course.
It's more like some people do like the alpha personality.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, you see, the way you say it, I think the key construct in the mix of honesty and humility is vulnerability.
Okay.
Because to be honest to someone, you have to be vulnerable to them. To be humble to them, you must be vulnerable to them. Now, you can't go wrong with being vulnerable.
Okay.
Because vulnerability is you giving your all.
Or showing parts of yourself that you wouldn't ordinarily show.
So it's you saying, I'm putting down all my defenses for you because I trust that you won't treat me ill. You are not being vulnerable because you want the person to love you more. You're being vulnerable because they've made you confident enough to be vulnerable.
Go to them.
So you trust them. That's what it is. So you trust someone enough to be able to tell them even the most painful things.
Got it.
That's you being vulnerable. And you are humble enough to accept when you are wrong if they tell you. That's equally being vulnerable.
Interesting.
By and large, I've had many people say things like, I will never accept it because when I do, they'll refer me to it. And so I acknowledge that I'm wrong, but if I accept it it will become a point where the other day, so I won't be. So I won't be vulnerable.
But that also means that that relationship then loses some authenticity.
You're right. But it comes from many things that have happened. So there's never a problem in any relationship that's singular. It's always multifaceted. And half the time, they're not about what is happening. They're about things that have happened in the past that have been...
So a plethora of things.
Exactly. Internalized or resentment that has built. So I'm always looking for, let's go to the background, the foundation of the problem. And not the... Today,
not the current
you said this,
symptoms
no,
of it.
It's always in the what happened. And that normally you might come to find out is just a sense of I don't feel respected. And so in order to get my respect, I will act in ways that are necessary ways to gain respect, or at least feel that I'm gaining respect. And normally people do that by instilling fear.
Interesting. So the second one, and I will read it, is around openness to experiences.
Oh, yeah.
And it says it describes being curious, creative, and intellectual versus being shallow, unimaginative, and conventional.
Yeah.
And so it's like if the person is creative, then that's also an open thing. Yeah.
Openness to experience is openness to change.
Right.
Anybody who is open to change thrives. That is a fact. Now, for us psychologists, openness to change falls under one of the broad personality factors. Okay, so we say that the people who have an openness to change are extremely flexible. And when we talk about resilience, flexibility is the hallmark of resilience. Your ability to navigate and change tactics and change rules when things aren't going your way. That's what openness to change is. Now, when you're open to change, it also says that, or you're open to experience, it also says that you have a mindset that is trusting. You allow yourself to be vulnerable, to accept the new,
whatever new
is coming your way.
Okay.
There was a time where we were using these personality assessments as an algorithm to look at whether people were compatible. Yeah. And what we used to do was, so if you and I were in a relationship, I'd take a personality test as you.
Okay.
And then you take a personality test as me.
Ooh.
And then you'll take it as yourself and I'll take it as myself. Now, we did that.
So I would be assuming what, I would be thinking what
knowing
you
me, how do you think I would have responded in...
Ooh, that would be hard.
And it was interesting that about, say, 80% of the people were poles apart in their evaluation of
their partners. Oh, that I can agree.
Good. In that same mix, we noticed that even for the people who our, let's say, algoric predictions would have said would struggle, those that scored high on openness to change seemed to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they always had a backup plan to a backup plan.
Yeah.
It's like someone saying, I'm in for the long haul.
Yeah.
Regardless of what comes, they find a way
to recalibrate.
And that, from a psychological standpoint, is also resilience. Yeah. Our ability to bounce back even in the face of challenges and advance.
I agree with you, and I think that's one of the things that we as Africans need to kind of also have a willingness to explore, that openness to change, because I think a lot of the time we have a bit of a fixed mindset where this is how we do it. Say, you know, it's not, and you say, you know.
Well, to be fair, we've been socialized that way.
I agree. And so maybe how do we unlearn some of those things, and how are we also going to, you know, work through?
I think this is an amazing platform to start doing that. You know, as we talk about things like this, it tends to open lots of people's perspective. So let me go into a little sensitive area of sex. Till this day, I have clients who have a huge sexual incompatibility. Why? Because partner says anything beyond
missionary
is sinful. You understand?
I get it.
It is sinful.
Yeah.
And that becomes a huge, not only is it huge, but you saying, I mean, you even trying to initiate something new brings a label.
Where did you learn it from? Who did you go and do that with? Yeah.
So,
who taught you that? What have you been reading?
So it's good for us to talk about this. We had one of these educational sessions where we talked about different positions, and we talked about the benefits of those positions for who was doing what.
Because some positions are more comfortable for women,
yes,
or more pleasurable for women than others, right?
In fact, there are some positions that are good for men who have premature ejaculation.
Yeah.
Now, once they started to look at the functional aspects, it started to soften people's hearts.
Yeah.
So it changed the dynamics. So I guess talking about that, like having a lot of these information going out, can be helpful in starting to change these rigid and inflexible mindsets.
And you're absolutely right. And sex is one of those taboo. I always say that we are a bit of a, we can be hypocritical because Charlie, people are having all sorts of sex, right?
Yes.
But it's one of the things that we just don't talk about. Oh, sex, dear Charlie, why are we talking about sex, right? But it's really a very human thing, right?
You'll be surprised to know there is this book. It's called Bumibe.
Okay.
It's an African proverb book.
Okay.
It was written.
I know you do African Proverbs P. You've not done one today. So at some point in time, we need one before we're out of here. I need one before we're out of here. So start thinking about one for me today.
The number of proverbs of
a sexual nature.
you have no idea.
Yeah.
And they are so raw.
Yeah.
And they make so much sense.
But look at Daddy Lumba's music. Look at all them.
Even now it's coded.
It's coded there.
These ones are raw.
Yeah.
And then you ask yourself, so what are we doing when we keep on trying to hide under the mask of it's not good, it's immoral? And when literature tells us that it's always been there.
True.
So we just need to keep talking about it. The talking about it doesn't mean you are doing. But
and it's eye-opening, and it's even for our children, because if we don't have the conversations in a healthy and constructive fashion, someone else will have the conversation through their lenses, which might not be the right lenses.
I have a client currently, female. She's been married for 14 years. Till this day, every time she has sex, she feels guilty. Because growing up, they always said, it's not good. Sex is not good. Sex is not good. They never added the context of, in marital relationships, it is. So they still feel bad that they're doing. And this is just, it's something that has been drummed in. The same way they say, if you enjoy sex, you're a whore. So as we talk about
it's meant for procreation. It's not meant for
pleasure.
For pleasure.
All of that. And I think we need to change that context, because for relationships to thrive, sex is a huge deal.
It's a huge deal.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
You can't take it away. The sexless marriage does not thrive.
And even today, we talk about, intimacy. Men require intimacy, a lot of intimacy as they are younger. But women also begin to require more intimacy as they get older, isn't it? So at some point in time, here will be...
Oh, it will come up.
Final comments. So 31-year-old Joshua and 28-year-old Araba are looking to go into a relationship. We've talked about many things today. If there is one thing you're going to say to them, and they're going into different relationships, and they come from different backgrounds, what is one thing you're going to say to them? Just one. If you had one single silver bullet that you would say.
If you're unsure about anything, just ask. Don't assume it. Don't don't think about it in the context of the experiences you've had for all your 30 whatever or 20 whatever years. When you're unsure, ask. When someone does something for you, say thank you. When you wrong someone, say I'm sorry. That's all it is.
Okay. It's been great having you.
It's been great being here.
Okay, so to the fun part of this.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
It looks fun.
So cocktails, the only requirement is that you need to tell me one thing that's in it. Or should we make it two? Two things that's in
I
it.
can't even tell you what's in it from here.
Because you're looking at the color.
I smell cocktails.
So let's go. Let's see. Stir it up. I'll start there. Cheers. Okay, let's see. Let's see how good you are. I like you a lot, so I hope you get it right. I love you, Seth. Ice, water. Stir it up.
I can only tell the taste by got another. Yes. There are too many distractions. Maybe another one.
Stir it up.